It's really good.
It was up.
It won. I think he might have won. I think it's powerful. I think his brother in the film might have won Best Supporting Actor. That's really good.
I knew that actor.
One of the Red Narrow Lines.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. Good morning in here, good morning out there, whether you're joining us in person or from home. Maybe you're even watching this video later on. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Asheville. I am Reverend Audette. I am the lead minister, and whoever you are, wherever you come from, wherever you are on your journey, however you identify, whomever you love, whatever call of love brings you here today, we are so glad to be together. We always want to shout out all the wonderful people who make our services possible, behind the scenes folks, even those not in the room, like our Director of Administration, David, or our Administrative Specialist, Aya, our Connections Coordinator, Trevor, and all of our welcome team and coffee volunteers, Simon on Tech, Kim Collins, who's our faith formation lead here, TKay Browning, our intern, and he's serving as our worship associate today, and of course, Dr. Les, and our guest musician today, Andy Jurik. In a year already off to an eventful start, it is so good to be together. This is where we make space to deal with all the awful, beautiful, infuriating, and hope-filled things that we are going to have to deal with. Please remember we're here for each other, perfectly imperfect, finding our messy way together. Also, just so you know, if you are not feeling your best, feel free to wear, in fact, we deeply encourage you to wear a mask. We usually have some in the hall. If you don't want to feel not at your best, you're also welcome to wear a mask. We want to make this a comfortable space where people wear masks for whatever reason that works for them, so please know that we welcome that. And now, as we begin, I invite you to take a deep breath. Silence your devices. Don't be that one right in the middle of a quiet moment, and prepare your hearts for our time together and our opening gift of music.
It's now time for our chalice lighting. Do I have my chalice lighting assistant, Ashlyn? It went out. We cannot know what the year may bring, and would we heed the prophecy if we could? So we kindle the flame of our historical faith to light our way into this new year and the many coming. May it show us the ways of love and help and care, of justice, mercy, and equality, and show to the world a beacon of safe harbor today and every time we gather. May we find the kindred warmth within us. Let us begin. We invite you to rise in body or spirit. For hymn number 347, Gather the Spirit.
Good morning. I'm Kim Collins. I am one of the. Is it on? Okay, good. I'm never sure. I'm Kim Collins. I'm one of the religious educators here. And before we do our wisdom story this morning, we just wanted to do a few reminders since we have so many new people these last few weeks. We just wanted to briefly talk about how we worship together as one big community. So obviously children are an important part of our community, and being in worship together is really important, right? Because kids that grow up going to worship go to worship after they age out of faith formation. So it's really important, and you guys know that we have an emphasis on that. So just some reminders about our time together. We have the kids in front on purpose so that they can see and hear what's happening in worship. We invite our families to sit together so that parents can help their kids during worship, and follow along with the rhythms of worship. And we just want to make sure that we keep our voices low and calm when we're here in this sacred space together.
And a few reminders for the taller among us as well. Ways that you can make sure this is a welcoming congregation for all ages is take a minute to, if you see a kiddo, say hi, maybe learn some names, have a lot of patience for wiggling, just as we have patience when you're wiggling, right? Because sometimes our hips are a little uncomfortable, we have to shift. But we really, it's so important. It's a deep, deep value for us to be creating an all ages worship. And so we just want you to take every effort you can to say hi and get to know people of all ages, from the smallest to the tallest. And just a reminder that we are an all ages congregation. And now, with that, we're going to have our wisdom story.
Okay, all right, so I have got this box here. I'm going to need someone to assist me. I'm going to ask Henry to come assist me, please. All right, Henry, can you open this box? It's just this one right here is the only one that's, you just got to pull it. Yeah, you can do it. Very nice. All right, now open it up. I need you to help me get just, whoops, just this part. Okay, all right, can you pull that stuff out for me and tell me what's in there? What's that?
A chalice thingy and a chalice. This is a chalice holder and this is a chalice.
Can you light that for me, please? Perfect. Okay, set that in there. All right, and then there's one more thing in the box. Can you pull that out?
Glitter.
Yes, glitter.
This is a glitter, but I don't know what I'm gonna use it for.
We're gonna keep the glitter in the container. But I'm going to tell you why those things are in this box. So the theme of the service, or the topic of the service today, is Panentheism. Does everybody know what that means? Very nice, very nice. So it's not fair if you're in seminary, Sean. So I had to kind of learn what this means this week, because I had to tell you guys about it. So the word panentheism, it's not pantheism, I want to be clear, it's panentheism, comes from the Greek for all in God, and it means that the idea that God, or the divine, or the spirit, also known as the spirit of the universe, is everywhere, in everything, in this universe and beyond. In panentheism, the original spirit is present everywhere. Hold on a second. Okay. In panentheism, the original spirit is present everywhere, which at the same time transcends all things created. How are we doing, guys? Okay. Well, pantheism, the one we're not talking about, asserts that all is God. Panentheism claims that God is greater than the known universe. So really easy for everybody to follow along with this. So that made me, I was like, okay, what does that make me think of? And it made me think of two things. It made me think of glitter. Because like glitter, the spirit is everywhere and in everything. And it also reminds me of the night sky and the vast unknown universe that's out there, which is also included here. And then we also have a chalice and a candle, and I'm going to thank Jen Johnson for this part, because she reminded me that frequently when we extinguish our candle in the chalice in our faith formation groups, especially if we're using a real candle, we talk about how when we extinguish that candle, the kind of the smoke that comes comes from it is the mystery, right? It's the mystery of the universe and everything. And so that also made me think about this. So you guys are going to talk a lot more about that. But right now, it is time for me and the kids and our RE collaborators to go down to our groups. So we will sing our children out. To the words of "As You Go" will be on your screen. And if you're new or visiting, please come on down with us so that you can find out where to pick your kids up when we're done.
So we're also going to be talking a little bit about prayer today, but to get us started, we're going to use a prayer written by Patricia Monahan. It's called The Tiniest of Prayers, and I just want to invite you for a moment to take a deep breath, find your own center, see what arises in you when we talk about prayer or meditation. Paper burns easily. It does not take a bomb to destroy these words, nor an explosion to drown a voice in a silent room. But as you hear this, 10,000 poets are raising their pens. 1 million songs are being chanted into the precious air. When all we have, so temporal, so fragile, small prayers must suffice. We pray on paper that the world does not yet end. We act in concert to sustain it. Amen. And now is the time in our service when we acknowledge our joys and our sorrows with a ritual of water and rocks. And as we do this, for all that grieves our hearts, we add salt to brine the water in this vessel. And for all that brings our hearts joy or celebration, we scatter petals to symbolize our happiness or our contentment. And then we invite you, if you will, if you'd like to join in this ritual, to line up on either side of the railing there. You can take a rock, place it in the vessel, and then proceed in sort of a circular manner that helps us keep the flow going well. And we receive a gift of music at this time as well. So please, join us. If you have shared, can you place extra rocks in the footstool? If you have shared a joy, know that we rejoice with you. If you've shared a sorrow, know that you are held in love and care by this community. We add these last rocks for all the joys and sorrows of our community carried by those who are not present here with us this morning, because our community is one community, whether gathered or apart.
Today's reading is Prayer 101 by Anne Lamott from her book, Help, Thanks, Wow. It's a good title, huh? You may wonder what I mean when I use the word prayer. It's certainly not what TV Christians mean. It is communication from the heart to that which passes understanding. Let's say it's communication from one's heart to God. Or if that is too triggering or ludicrous a concept for you, to the good, the force that is beyond our comprehension, but that in our pain and supplication or relief, we don't need to define or have proof of any established contact with. Let's say it is what the Greeks call the really real, what lies within us beyond the scrim of our values, positions, convictions, and wounds. Or let's say it's a cry from deep within to life or love with capital L's. Nothing could matter less than what we call this force. I know some ironic believers who call God Howard, as in, our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. My friend Robin calls God the grandmothers. The Deteriorata, a parody of the Desiderata, counsels us, therefore, make peace with your God, whatever you conceive her to be, hairy thunderer or cosmic muffin. Let's not get bogged down on whom or what we pray to. Let's just say prayer is communication from our hearts to the great mystery or goodness, or Howard. To the animating energy of love we are sometimes bold enough to believe in. We could call this force not me, or not preachers on stage with a choir of 800. Or for convenience, we could just say God.
So I chose that piece by Anne to give you the short version, but now I'm going to give you the long version. Some 60 plus years ago, the theologian Paul Tillich declared that we should just retire the word God because it had become virtually meaningless. Meaningless in the sense that there's no useful consensus about what the word means, and much room for frustration and confusion when individual interpretations of the word meet and clash, as they often do. So Tillich himself preferred to use expressions such as ultimate concern, ground of being, and other descriptive phrases, all of which pointed to a concept of God not as a supernatural person somewhere out there, but as the ultimately unknowable direction in which all things point. It's important to begin conversations about God with an acknowledgement that this word, God, is almost incomprehensibly open. We must attend to the details when we wish to consider the subject or risk, as it has been said in a famous film, a failure to communicate. I want to talk to you about the idea of God within the parameters of this theology known as Panentheism. And the reason I want to do that, by the way, just as an aside, is because I am a panentheist. While not new, it was first introduced by Carl Christian Friedrich Krauss in the early 1800s. It isn't yet a particularly familiar term, as Kim's little asking you the question of who knew it showed us. It's a word often confused with pantheism, so let me start with an explanation of these two terms and how they differ, right? Actually, Unitarian Universalism has a unique relationship with pantheism. I used to get very confused because when I was earlier in ministry, I would hear people say with some regularity, I told someone I was going to the UU church and they said, "What, those people who think God is a tree?" After I preached at the first service, somebody came up and said that one of her colleagues thinks that we worship dogs. The question is, where on earth would people get the idea that Unitarian Universalists believe God is a tree or a rock or a dog? Our openness to earth traditions and indigenous religions is probably part of what spawned this silly and simplistic notion. Many of the earth-based traditions have a very particular and focused appreciation for nature as being a conduit and a metaphor and expression of the divine. For that matter, the development of our transcendentalist thought drew so strongly on the idea that meditation on and appreciation of nature was a direct route to knowing God, probably contributed to this idea. But the comment, "they believe God is a tree," most likely comes from a fumbling understanding of pantheism. Pantheism is the belief that everything that exists in the universe is an expression of the divine, and the universe itself is God. In other words, a tree is an expression of God, and the universe itself is the sum of God. There's no otherness to God. God is all we can know, and there is nothing more than this universal God self. And the universe, this specific universe, and God are coextant. Now, it's important to note that this view of God or the universe does not assume that there's a person God who acts in history. Rather, there is nothing but God, and everything is a manifestation of God's self. So you might wonder, okay, well, what's the problem with that? Well, it leaves unclear why there are different manifestations at all. I mean, why not just one unified God self with no differentiation? What happens to free will when there's nothing but God? In pantheism, God and the world are identical, as are God and the universe. Where the universe ends, so does God. What limits the universe has, those two are God's limits. And obviously, this notion obviates theories such as multiple universes. Panentheism shares an important component with pantheism, but goes much further. I'm going to share two explanations of pantheism which look at some of these unique details. The first one here is from Alan Anderson, who is a modern writer on the subject. And Alan writes, "The universal arrangement is not pantheism, all is God, but panentheism, a term devised by Karl K.F. Kraus to describe his thought. It's best known for its use by the process theologian Charles Hartshorne, and more recently by Matthew Fox. Panentheism says that all is in God, somewhat as if God were the ocean and we were fish. If one considers what is in God's body to be part of God, then we can say that God is all there is, and then some. The universe is God's body, but God's awareness or personality is greater than the sum of all the parts of the universe. All the parts, this is important, a little bit, dense, but here it is important. All the parts have some degree of freedom in co-creating with God. At the start of its momentary career as a subject, an experience is God as the divine initial aim. As the experience carries on its choosing process, it is a freely aiming reality that is not strictly God, since it can depart from God's purpose to some degree. Yet everything is within God. It's not necessary to go to pantheism with a God that acts as a universal wet blanket, smothering the possibilities of everything else's genuine existence. Panentheism gives all that one could want, an all-encompassing, growing God, everywhere present and containing everywhere within God's self, and the reality of oneself and others freely deciding within God, responding to God's overtures in the process of co-creation. So that's Allen's work. The much more renowned contemporary theologian and scholar Marcus Borg describes panentheism this way. I argue in my book for a different foundational concept for God, a different root concept for thinking about God, which I call, as others do, panentheism. And the middle in syllable there is crucial to distinguish it from pantheism. This way of thinking about God, or the sacred, or spirit, which are terms I use interchangeably, sees God not as a supernatural being out there, but as a non-material presence and reality which is right here and all around us. And I also argue that panentheism, which literally means everything is in God, is faithful to biblical tradition and things like that. One of the best shorthand ways I know of explaining is with two semi-technical terms, and these are important. This is what I use typically: the transcendence of God and the immanence of God. To say that God is transcendent means that God is more than everything, is beyond everything. To say that God is immanent means God is present in everything. So the immanence of God means that the sacred is right here, and the transcendence of God means the sacred is more than right here. I think many people who say they're not sure whether they believe in God, or who actively say they don't believe in God, are thinking of God, the God of supernatural theism. And that's from an interview he did called Meeting God Again. Now, one of the most damaging arguments within almost any theology is the question of evil. If there is a God, and if God is good, then why is there evil, or why does God allow evil? Pantheism struggles on this point, because if everything is God, then everything evil is equally God. Panentheism, however, has a different understanding, and here's how Borg explains that part. Let me start by talking about evil in relationship to that supernatural interventionist model of God. A major problem that I and other theologians have had with this supernaturalist, interventionist model of God is that it makes it very difficult to explain how things like the Holocaust, or the TWA 800 exploding in the sky, or the individual and random tragedies that people experience all the time can happen. If we think that God can intervene when God chooses to, then it becomes incomprehensible how God could have let the Holocaust happen. If we think that God sometimes intervenes to heal people of catastrophic and life-threatening illness, then it becomes incomprehensible by why God doesn't do that for everybody who's got premature cancer, let's say. all of those problems become utterly insoluble, it seems to me, with this interventionist model of God. Some 30 years ago, Bishop John Robinson, who wrote Honest to God, he listed 3 reasons why atheism is the only attractive modern option. He was thinking of atheism in relationship to the supernatural model of God. Now, one of those reasons was that God was morally intolerable. His point is the one that I'm just making. If God could intervene but chooses not to, then God is morally intolerable. For the panentheistic model of God, the notion of God as being outside of the process, who sometimes intervenes, simply disappears. With a panentheistic model, God is present in everything, God is the source of everything, but it doesn't mean God is the source of everything that happens, but God is present in and with everything. Now I'm going to delve with you, this is my own way of explaining this, with a different metaphor for the relationship between, for example, humans and God in a panentheistic worldview. Here's a metaphor. Cells in a body, to the body itself. In a human body, for example, the cells are generally, and let me know if this is not true for you, generally necessary as a part of the whole. Anyone for whom that's not true? Yeah, they're a necessary part of the whole, though any individual cell may die or be replaced with no particular harm to the whole. Similarly, cells are themselves made up of constituent parts. They perform different functions. As humans, we're now aware that we have cells. We are reliant upon them. We may even do what we can to increase the overall health of our cells, but we do not directly control our cells. They function or fail to function independently of our will for the most part. Additionally, most of us would agree that our larger self, the human being, has a consciousness and awareness that greatly exceeds the awareness of an individual cell. And also human beings have agency that exceeds the agency of a cell. In other words, I as a human person can do things, and my cells are part of that, whether they know it or not. They are part of a greater whole. Of course, as a human person, I can directly impact some of my cells. For example, I could cut off my leg. And my cells can impact me. They can grow without regard to limit. And then I have cancer, which can kill me and all of my cells. But within this metaphor, you can see that the relationship between self and cells is necessary, but it's not directive. Loosely speaking, my cells have free will, as do human beings within a paradigm of panentheism. And it is by choosing poorly, or perhaps maybe we could say with a imperfect or limited knowledge, that human beings in particular create suffering or evil. However, to the panentheist, there is something much more important than how suffering or evil might come about, and that is that God is present with us in our experience of suffering. And there is something more than our experience of pain. This can be a healing concept. Martin Luther King Jr. once spoke to this concept when he famously quoted one of our Unitarian foreparents, when he said, "The moral arc of the universe is long, but it bends towards justice." The transcendent, enduring moreness of God is that justice-bending arc, and we have agency with God in the bending. Now, there are other things that emerge from this understanding as well, such as the possibility of love writ large. Panentheism allows for love in that God is present in the things of this world, but is also more than those things. But because there is more than one consciousness, even if ours is perhaps more limited than God's, from that, love is possible. To be alive is to be able to choose. Choosing is only possible through some level of consciousness, and choice exists based on a basic freedom, which we usually call free will. So love becomes possible between all the agents of choice and will, between us as human beings or any beings who choose. and between we choosers and the largest chooser we can imagine, God. Love is at the center of our faith, but we need to understand how absolutely essential an act it is to choose to love, and perhaps how powerful it is to believe that a love which exceeds all limited things is also at work in the universe. As Gandalf reminds Frodo in The Lord of the Rings, there are other forces at work in this world, Frodo, besides the will of evil. And that is an encouraging thought. In the end, that is what I hope we might meditate on in difficult days, that there is something greater than our limited individual selves, and that we have a profound power as beings with agency. We can again and again and against all odds choose love, choose to cast our lots with those who love and hope and serve a higher purpose, come good days or bad. Now, let me end with this quote from Viktor Frankl, who survived the concentration camps and who reminded us, "We who lived in concentration camps can remember the men who walked through the huts comforting others, giving away their last piece of bread. They may have been few in number, but they offer sufficient proof that everything can be taken from a person but one thing, the last of human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way." May we each remember our own essential freedom in the coming days, the freedom to love, to be a part of something larger than ourselves, and to return again and again to this home of our heart. Amen.
Now please rise in body or spirit for hymn number 21. We'll sing verse 1, 3, and 4 of For the Beauty of the Earth. And if you're like me and like to sing from the book, know that we have changed the language in verse 3 to be more inclusive. Be seated. This is now the time where we welcome any visitors we have with us today. If you're a visitor and would like to introduce yourself briefly and tell us where you're from, a microphone will be brought to you. You can just raise your hand, and one of these lovely folks will find you with a microphone.
Hi, I'm Nicole. My husband Jeremiah just left with my son Felix, and our daughter Hattie's down with the kids, and we live here in Nashville.
Hi, I'm Margot, and I'm a member of the First Unitarian Church of Baltimore, and I'm visiting here because I'm working on moving to Asheville, and finally visited on a Sunday. It's wonderful to be here.
Welcome.
Great. Does anyone see Trevor? There he is. I don't know if that was, we were planning on having you pop out. Was that the plan? We had it. We did it. Great. After service, everyone right now wave at Trevor. We waved, we clapped. He's our connections coordinator who would love to meet you after the service, especially if you have any questions. And you can join us in the Sandberg Hall. There's a welcome table with lots more information. You can sign up for more information. We have a special announcement today as we move into our announcements. Our 2024 auction, delayed by Tropical Storm Helene, is coming up in 2 weeks. The auction gala, including dinner, silent auction, and live auction, will be Saturday, January 25th at the JCC. Today is the deadline for donations and for child care requests. Come and see our intrepid team at the auction table during coffee hour. I think there's probably still some fudge there as well. Is there still fudge? All right, still fudge. Our other announcements are on his slides at the beginning of service. If you have missed them, refer to Thursday's weekly e-news as everything is described there. If you don't receive the e-news, ask an usher to show you how to sign up or email us at information@uuasheville.org. Today, the entirety of our collection will be sent to the UUA Disaster Fund to help support UUs in California affected by the Los Angeles wildfires. Asheville UUs. A little round of applause there. It's great. Asheville UUs know all too well how devastating such overwhelming, complete loss of homes and communities is. And I know all of us are deeply affected by the heartbreaking circumstances in California. We send our love and care to the first responders and caregivers and those who are also taking care of animals in this time of tragedy. I invite you to be gentle with yourselves in this time. I'm feeling it personally of like the grief of holding tragedy here and tragedy far away, and that's a complex and tender grief. You can donate by check, but be sure to write UU Disaster Fund in the info in the memo line. All cash donations today will go to that fund. You can also donate with the QR code here or by texting the number you see there on the screen. The work and ministries of this congregation are entirely supported by the generosity of our members and friends. We celebrate your generosity each Sunday with music and thanks. You make us possible. We give thanks for you. The offering will now be gratefully received. It's really lovely. I played guitar for the first service, and it's a great thing to think of how different the sounds can be made from my basic three chord strummer to a true master. And it's also just a great metaphor for how the gifts of the novice and the master can both find home here. I think that's really lovely. For the gifts of your presence, time, wisdom, and resources, we are grateful.
Before we have our benediction, I want to say two quick things. One is I just want to make a special thank you to the board who, when I asked to have the full offering today, they responded so quickly and positively to make sure we could do this morning, which I think we all feel how important such a thing can be. And I know we felt the generosity of those around the country to know that they were thinking of us and holding us, and still are. The other is that most Sunday as we do our rituals, including today, I see a lot of people that I haven't had a chance yet to meet in person or maybe even have a meaningful conversation with. So if that describes you, please know I would love to get to know you, even if only a little. So if you have a way to do so, I'd love for you to consider making a little time to get together or just have a passing conversation when you're here with us. It is really helpful in helping us make a warm community that welcomes everyone. Also, for our folks in coffee hour, everyone's on the welcome team. How do we do that? Anyone? Name tags, good point. And speaking to how many people you don't usually talk to? At least 3, right? Thank you. That's also how we make a warm and wonderful community. All right, and now, for all that we have kindled together this morning, let us give thanks. For all the prayers, for the world that we yet hold, let us carry them with us and do our part in bringing them into fruition. And let us sing our closing song together. Please rise as you're willing and able to do so. Go see the auction team and get some bugs.